If you asked 1,000 people to make a list of the top action movies in Hollywood's history, probably most would mention the same ones, like Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, Speed, and of course, The Rock. No one really believed in the success of these films during the production stage. So many actors turned down offers to star in them. Those actors who did take risks became superstars after the movies were released. Mel Gibson, Bruce Willis, Keanu Reeves, and Nicolas Cage are just a few examples. The last one quickly gained enormous popularity after his role in The Rock. Who knows what Nicolas Cage would be doing now if it weren't for this Michael Bay movie that set the trend for Cage with a gun. The Rock's journey to the big screen was difficult. Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer had just finished their legal disputes with Paramount Pictures, with whom they had a long-term contract. They produced multiple successful movies for the studio, including Flashdance, Beverly Hills Cop, and Top Gun, but suffered a setback in 1990 with Days of Thunder. The film's final earnings fell short of the studio and producers' expectations. Paramount Pictures accused the producers of overspending and demanded the return of about $20 million spent on Days of Thunder. Bruckheimer and Simpson resisted for a while, but eventually terminated their contracts, paid a penalty, and left to join Walt Disney Studios. In the new studio, they started working on several scripts, one of which was The Rock. But there was a problem. The script required huge amounts of money for those times. Disney refused to spend $90 million on just one film, especially since the producer's first project at the studio was a flop. Their action comedy, The Ref, was a huge box office failure that didn't even cover its small budget. Instead of making one big movie, Bruckheimer and Simpson tried to get $80 million from the studio for 3 smaller ones: Dangerous Minds, Crimson Tide, and Bad Boys. The last one had a funny story happen to it. As per the contract, if the studio firmly refused to produce certain films, Bruckheimer and Simpson had the option to make them at a different studio. That's exactly what happened with Bad Boys. The studio flatly refused to make a comedy about cops, citing the concept's lack of originality. To be fair, the original script for Bad Boys that the producers wanted to put into production at Disney's facilities was completely different. It was supposed to be a dumb comedy about 2 New York cops, starring John Lovitz and Dana Carvey. When the producers approached Sony Pictures with the script, the studio gave them the go-ahead, but required them to make numerous plot changes and cut the budget in half. As a result, white cops became black and filming had to be moved to Miami due to budget constraints. While working on these 3 projects, the producers didn't give up trying to get The Rock into production. Knowing that the easiest way to do this would be to give the lead role to some big celebrity, they offered the script to Arnold Schwarzenegger. They wanted him to play John Patrick Mason. Arnold had plenty of offers at the time, so after reading the script, he refused. He said he did it because the script he received was only 80 pages with many corrections, handwriting, and scribbles that he couldn't decipher. Arnold later admitted that he regretted declining the role. Who knows what would have happened to the script for The Rock if any of Bruckheimer and Simpson's 3 projects had failed. Perhaps the movie would never have seen the light of day, as was common among hundreds of other action projects at the time. However, Dangerous Minds, Crimson Tide, and Bad Boys did very well in theaters, especially the first 2. Following their triple box office success, Disney gave the producers the go-ahead to produce The Rock. As often happens, the movie's script at that time was quite different from the final version that we all know. It was much darker and depressing. The first person Bruckheimer and Simpson called to direct was Tony Scott. He made a name for himself in Hollywood with his successful box office projects. Besides, the producers knew him well. Scott directed Top Gun, Beverly Hills Cop 2, and The Last Boy Scout. Tony agreed to work on The Rock, and even contributed to the script. But later, he admitted that he never liked the script, so he left The Rock as soon as he got the chance to work with Robert De Niro on The Fan. The production of the movie was at risk of being drawn out. But Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson's relationship soured completely, and they agreed that The Rock would be the last project they would work on together. To get rid of this burden as quickly as possible, the producers decided not to waste time and hired Michael Bay, with whom they had a good working relationship on Bad Boys. Disney was not happy with this choice. They wanted The Rock to be a serious and expensive action movie, so they were disappointed to see at its helm the director of a low-budget comedy that was heavily criticized by all American critics. The studio approached Quentin Tarantino about directing, but he declined, agreeing only to polish the existing script. He was the one who gave the main characters a wider range of swear words. Another person whom the producers had to fight for was Nicolas Cage. Back then, no one thought of Cage as an action hero. But the producers got very lucky, because after Cage, they reached out to Sean Connery. When the actor read the script, he asked them only one question: who would be in the movie with him? Connery agreed as soon as he heard Nicolas Cage's name. Sean Connery's presence in the movie was a huge success, so the studio chose not to think too much about Nicolas Cage and just put up with him. The filming process was very difficult. The low-budget bad boys had minimal studio control, whereas in The Rock, Disney closely watched Michael Bay's every move, forcing him to fight for many of his decisions. Despite this, Bay still allowed the actors to improvise, which resulted in various comedic scenes. Disney's patience ran out one day, and studio executives summoned Bay for a meeting. According to rumors, he was going to be fired as director of The Rock. Bay himself was absolutely sure of this, especially given that he was called right in the middle of filming, thus interrupting it. But according to Bay, what happened next saved his career. Dissatisfied with the filming halt, Sean Connery said that he would go to studio executives with Bay. Later in his interview, Bay said that instead of the expected dismissal, he witnessed Sean Connery's rage, who entered studio head Ricardo Mestre's office right after him and immediately began yelling. Sean Connery received $12 million for The Rock and the position of producer, which allowed him to directly influence many decisions regarding the movie. According to Connery, Bay was an excellent director, and during the entire time they worked together, he didn't doubt any of his decisions. Connery later said that The Rock was the best movie he had starred in since the 1990s. Anyway, Bay wasn't fired. The actors started to improvise even more, and the studio no longer interfered with the production. In addition, Don Simpson's death from heart problems at the time added to the studio's troubles. Management was worried that if they tried to interfere in the filming process, everything would collapse. The producer's heart problems were caused by his cocaine and alcohol addiction. Simpson's addictions were also the reason Jerry Bruckheimer decided to end their 15-year collaboration. Nevertheless, The Rock was dedicated to Simpson's memory. The movie, by the way, owes a lot to the producer. He was the one who turned General Hamal into an anti-hero, rather than the simple villain he was in the original script. The movie's test screening at the studio went fairly well, but audiences complained that the middle part was a bit weak. Michael Bay quickly fixed this by adding a car chase through San Francisco. Originally, Sean Connery's character was leaving the hotel ninja style. Many people probably noticed the strange camera shake when the actors' faces in the car were shown. Due to scheduling conflicts, the actors had limited time for shooting, so the scene was filmed in a studio pavilion. The studio also couldn't get permission to stage the explosion in time, so they staged it in another place. At the main filming location, they simply set a car on fire and spiced everything up with special effects. Released in June 1996, The Rock grossed $335 million against a $75 million budget. This was the fourth best result in 1996, trailing only Independence Day, Twister, and Mission Impossible. However, all of these movies were rated PG-13, whereas The Rock was rated R. The careers of everyone involved in the production took off. Disney no longer tried to control Michael Bay when he was working on Armageddon. Studios spared no expense for Bruckheimer's films, although this later led to rather unfortunate consequences. Sean Connery's roles began to pay him $20 million. As for Nicolas Cage, he rose to prominence as an action superstar.